não me ouviste e foste embora. Vi tudo em ti de certo, me esqueceu. Como ontem o meu grito deste agora. Quando os outros te batem, beijo-te eu.
Patience, do you think we can start?
Se bem que as minhas...
Hello.
Okay.
Hello, Hannah.
Yes, Patience, if you're ready, we can start.
Yeah, I think our power went out and I think it's happening again. Our connection is going off and on.
Okay, so good morning to everybody and to Patience from the UNESCO office. Big welcome, Patience, and I'm going to hand over to you for chairing today. Are you there, Patience?
The connection is dipping in and out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Okay, Patience, go. And then if we
It's
have
all
a
right.
problem, we'll ask Charles to just assist.
Charles is Charles in the office?
Yes,
We
yes.
are all in the same
Okay.
situation,
Go ahead,
as
I
well
think
as
we are all fine.
Caroline. All right. So good morning, distinguished course participants. In continuation of the course orientation that we started yesterday, we have put together a panel this morning that will be presenting on two issues. One, a keynote address on education transformation and ESD policy direction in SADC. Then our second panelist to be looking at ESD in Southern Africa, the past, present, and the future, to give us an orientation of where we started from, the process and the progress so far, and what we are heading for in the future. Let us begin with the keynote address on education transformation and ESD policy direction in SADC, to be presented this morning by we like to call her distinguished in our own way, Miss Caroline Medel Ananuevo. Miss Caroline Medel Ananuevo is the head of the education unit in the UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa since January 2015. Prior to her assignment in Southern Africa, she was the deputy director at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. That is a UNESCO Category 1 institute in Hamburg, Germany. During her 22 years as the deputy director in that institute, or work in that institute, her main engagements were on areas relating to gender, youth, skills development, literacy, and non-formal education, HIV preventive education in non-formal settings, and citizenship education. Before joining UNESCO in 1993, she was assistant professor at the University of the Philippines, teaching sociology and other social science subjects. She was also involved in a wide range of research commissioned by the World Bank, UNIFEM, which is now UN Women, UNICEF, and ILO in the areas of urban poor women and undertaking research. She is also the director of, simultaneously, her work at the university and undertaking research. She was also the director of the Center of Women Resource, a nationwide NGO involved in training research on women issues. This is where she sharpened her popular education and training skills. Now she is very passionate in education, in UNESCO's work in ESD, as she believes in the role of ESD as a catalyst for achieving the 17 SDG goals. Our distinguished head of unit of UNESCO, Caroline, you have the floor. I hope you are able to connect.
Thank you, Patience, for that long introduction. I hope you're able to see me. I am outside the tree and trying to have this connection with you. Are you able to see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so the title of my presentation is Transformations, no, and what has spotlight? Can you see my movement? It's not moving. That's my challenge with technology, because it seems it's not able to. Are you able to see?
Yeah, it's not moving. Try to move it again.
Are you changing the slide?
Yes.
Okay,
It is
it's not
supposed to
changing.
be. Let me stop share and let me see what's the challenge here. We tried this earlier, but let me now maybe go to the next slide. So, because the
Are you able to change your position? Unless you are not going to use your video.
Because the
light is reflecting on the screen.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah, it's better.
Can you see now the slide?
We cannot see the slides.
Okay, let me see what's happening here. Sorry.
Or do you want to send this slide to Prevent to help us?
Let me see.
Okay.
It's a long slide, and let me again see. Can you see it now?
Stop sharing and start sharing again.
Okay. What I did is, because maybe it's the animation.
We can see it now. Yes.
It's the animation that is a problem, so I will not show the first slide. But just to
we are
start,
seeing it now.
Okay, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me see. And now I made it. It seems if I go the big one, it's not able to show. Okay, so let me start by saying, can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, first of all. Good morning to everybody. So my first slide was about actually transformation in Southern Africa, but because it's animation, I think technology is affecting that. So let me start by saying that education matters, no? And I think we often hear this, the purpose.
Sorry, Caroline,
yes?
There's some disturbing noises in the background. That is.
Let me see. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Lesser?
Yes, it's much quieter now. Thank you so much.
So let me just, Is it better now like this?
Yes, it was fine.
Okay, so as I said, I wanted to start with this education matters, because we need to understand that many leaders in the Southern African region have already given us the cue that this is very important. National liberation movements in the region have used education in their conquest, but also more important to supposedly, in quotes, transform society. So I just want us to be reminded that we are in a region where education is valued. But what has happened so far, and how do we go forward? And let me just start that in UNESCO, and I wanted to root ourselves that in the region, there's this importance of education. And then, of course, in UNESCO, side by side by this importance of education is the focus on learning. Because people can say that you can be educated, but you're not learning, or you can be learning even if you're not going to schools. But UNESCO has come up with a few important documents which has framed our understanding of learning. So the first one was Learning to Be by 4, and the importance that education helps us to be ourselves. And this is very much related to, one needs to juxtapose this with the notion of Ubuntu. A person is a person through persons, or I am because of you. So in fact, when this document of Learning to Be was launched by 1972, they did not say, okay, it's Ubuntu. But I think for us, the challenge is to make sure that we embed these documents to what is the reality in Africa. So my humanity is caught up, is inextricably bound up, what is yours? And the next important document which UNESCO launched was the 4 pillars of learning: learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, in addition to learning to be. So this has grounded the objectives in one way. One can say when people use these 4 pillars, it gives us an idea what are the objectives of education. So education helps us become better persons. Education helps us to know more about things, but education also is action. And I think the 4th is very important, how to live together. And that is the Delors report, which says that the treasure is to really understand these 4 pillars of learning. So in fact, in Africa today, the question is, if you see all the crises, how has education really addressed all these different issues? The youth who are not going to school, the young people who needs to be really encouraged so that they can have a better environment for learning. And of course, one needs to also understand that in the classroom, there is a diversity, not only of ethnic groups, but also of religions. How do classrooms take into consideration this great diversity? Gone were the days when in a small school you will have village children, they know each other, but now with expanding populations, with mobility, more and more diversity is an important element that shapes educational environment. Now, I just want us to be reminded that we are in a region which has come up with the SADC industrialization strategy with the roadmap. And the question to ask is, how is our education aligned? What are the educational plans of the different SADC countries, and how are they aligned with this SADC industrialization strategy? This is the development objective of the region, and it's important for us to understand what does it mean. And I have put here, because we are now since 8 years in the SDG framework, the Sustainable Development Goals framework, where 17 goals have been agreed upon by all the heads of states in the world, and say that, yes, we will pursue this until 2030. I hope you are familiar with this and the challenge. And I put here, I quote Mandela, because it's very important to really see, this is the vision. We saw the vision of SADC, industrialization vision. And so I quote Mandela, action without vision is only passing time. Vision without action is merely daydreaming. But vision with action can change the world. So I think what we're trying to do now is to understand, with all this vision about learning to be, 4 pillars, the SADC industrialization strategy, SDG, what does it really mean for the countries, for the classrooms, and of course for you as teachers. So the challenge, in fact, when we say transforming, we are now in a globalized world. How do we integrate global, regional, national agenda What is our understanding in Mozambique or in Angola? Do people understand the SDG goals? Do they really take to heart the SDG 4? Do teachers, in fact, understand that they're contributing to the SDG 4? And so the challenge with all these global discourses, and I am speaking from the UN perspective, we have all these goals agreed upon in a global platform, but the question is, how are they translated in countries and in specific contexts in a country? And I am putting these slides because this is the reality. This is what you see in your classrooms. I remember a month ago, we were training in Zambia, and I asked, what does it mean to be learner-centered? Most of the educational institutions, governments are talking about learner-centered education. But what does it mean when you have 200, 250 teachers, students rather? And one teacher was saying that the room is so crowded that in fact she cannot walk from the blackboard to the student because they are just occupying the school. So the question, we want to have transformative education, but what are the learning environments? What are our schools like? So I think what I'm trying to do is to make sure that as we dream, as we say, let's transform, we understand where we are at the moment. And just to give you an idea of where are we vis-a-vis target 4.1, primary and secondary education, you can see the unevenness of within the region, where in many countries, around a quarter of students or even more do not reach math proficiency in reading or math. And you can see the diversity in the region. So as the region says, let's do industrialization strategy, where math and science reading is important, how are we preparing the young people, the students? So I think what we have tried to do in the sustainability starts with teachers is to make sure that it's not only about cognitive skills, knowing about environment, but also doing something about it, being out in the open. And I think in the next sessions, I hope you will come up with change projects that will help transform your own practices, because that is the dream of this project. And to transform means to have dreams of based on our realities. The target 4.5 is about equity. So we see that in fact, people, the young students are not performing. And here you will see even what is the difference between rural and urban schools, where we know that given the facilities in rural schools, definitely the children, the students will not perform as much as their urban counterparts. And again, an important role, I always say in the office, our priorities are teachers, because without the teachers, you will not have quality education. And that's the goal of SDG 4. And so the question is, how do teachers teach is dependent on how they are trained in service and pre-service. And usually it's the teachers in front, but in these two examples, we can see the possibility of transforming classroom settings where students are actively engaged. Their teacher, hopefully with the student, is trying to understand and explain, but also make the student learn about the different areas. And now let me go to give you the 4.C, because you're all teacher educators. But just to show that, in fact, 85% of primary teachers globally were trained in 2017. But look at the big difference in sub-Saharan Africa. And again, I show you the different countries. So 64% is the average, but it masks the wide differences in within the countries. And the question is how, even if they were trained, but how are we having standards that will help us transform education and learning in the classrooms? And of course, I put this slide because one of the key areas, and COVID-19 has shown the importance of ICT, how we are preparing teachers to deliver remote learning or to deliver ICT classes. And these two pictures, I should say, is the goal. Because if you just reflect on your classroom realities, on the teachers that you're working with, one can ask, what is the computer student ratio? What is the kind of device the teacher has? Maybe the teacher has not as an advanced device as the students. So all these realities affect the teacher's competencies and delivery of ICT. And finally, let me show you the reality that in fact, countries are not spending as much as they should for education. And COVID-19 has just, how should one say, excluded, has just diminished even the education budget as governments struggled to make their people healthy, open economies, and then later have open schools. But given the small amount of funding that goes to education, one can ask, how can we really transform education? Because we know we need resources. And in SADC, we should be proud that in SADC, almost half of the countries meet the benchmarks, but a quarter of countries meet neither. And I will not say if Angola or Mozambique are where Angola and Mozambique are located, but it's important for us to understand what kind of resources. Now, to transform education, teachers are central. And that's why in our work, together with Rhodes, we said we really need to make sure that teachers are the focus of attention of government. And in our work in UNESCO, what we have tried to do is to make sure that there is standards for teachers, regional standards, which can be a benchmark for teachers. And after that has been adopted by the ministers, we said that, okay, you have the standards, but we also have continuous professional development. So we believe that without continuous professional development, whether it be on ICTs or in ESD, one cannot really transform the educational system and the classroom setup. So we have focused our work in 2019 on developing a framework for CPD, and I should say that in the last SADC meeting, this has been adopted, and we are now trying to make sure that there is a SADC ICT framework for teachers, because we know that within the region, there is such a wide variety, wide diversity and inequality of the way teachers have access and are trained on ICT. Now, I would like to bring to you TVET, because I imagine some of you are coming from TVET classes. Many times, TVET is not considered as the preferred option. It's the universities. But we now know if SADC says the industrialization strategy, TVET is very important. And here, I'm just giving you an idea of what transforming TVET is for UNESCO. First, it's about making sure employability, this redistribution and inclusion, and greening economies. And I think I put this slide because it's a way to go. This is the direction of transformation. And this is one example of what TVET colleges, and I hope those who are working with TVET colleges can be thinking of how they can be transforming their practices in the colleges by understanding what is green TVET, advocating for green TVET, making sure that young people, especially girls, because we know that TVET is not really something girls are trained, are socialized to go into? How do we review TVET policies so that they're green, especially in the light of the SADC industrialization strategy? And how do we build and strengthen partnerships? And this is one example in South Africa when they say whole institution approach. And I'm putting this slide because this is one model, not to copy and paste, but to understand the possibilities of you as teachers, how you can support the green campus, green curriculum, green research, green community, and green culture. Segregation, less use of plastic, having young people involved in making sure that there's a future generation that can still benefit from the world today. And I just want to post these two examples of ICT because we know that computers, technology also use a lot of energy. And how are we relating this? Transformation means trying to understand the relationship of the different elements. So we talk about ICT, but are they, what the non-renewable energy that they use, the lack of electricity, and how are students, whether individually or in school, really able to work on technology is a key dilemma, because now we're saying that without ICT, without connectivity, people are going to be out of touch. But is that the real? Is that transformative? What will happen? I was just reading a very good book on the wilderness in Africa. It's entitled Black Lion from South Africa. And in this book, he was saying how he really has learned from nature. He said he was not so much in technology in the beginning, but how nature has taught him all the values and the relationships, especially vis-a-vis animals and nature, to listen to them. And I think a transformative education agenda has to go and listen to nature. We have been so divorced, maybe myself, but maybe in many of your countries, in many of your communities, you are still in touch and communicating with nature. But for others, how are we really so separate from nature? And the question for us, I mean, not for us as you and me, but how to exploit nature, how to get so much from the nature, how to accumulate, how to cut the trees, how to kill animals as much as possible. So instead of trying to understand how are we coexisting in our environment. And so I think I would like to end by saying that to transform education, I have not really put a roadmap on transforming education, but rather to really understand what are the challenges for us. Quality, we want to have green energy, but in South Africa, I saw the debate that is it really possible to go directly to renewable energy? Can't we still have oil? And that is faced by so many countries in the world, no? And for oil producing countries, what does it mean when we slowly go to renewable energy? So let me end by saying that in the past 3 years that we have had this as sustainability starts with teachers, we have held national dialogues and policy workshops. I think some of you participated in Joburg. And I think we are slowly coming to a situation where we are building. SADC is one of the richest in terms of ESD practices. I always say to Hela and colleagues that we have 30 years of practice of SADC, which has meant conceptual understanding, sharpening. So what we have done so far in the Joburg Policy Dialogue is to develop a SADC strategy on ESD. And I hope that in the next ministerial meeting in June. This will be approved so that hopefully with this SADC strategy at the regional level, countries can really benchmark and see how they can slowly transform educational systems so it really can be one that really transforms not only communities, individuals, but also the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for those very, very profound words to help us to think through on how we must work to transform education, highlighting all our agreements at the global level, at the regional level, at the sub-regional level, and what these imply for countries. What is the context, the specific context for the countries, and the fact that things are uneven for learners in assessing quality education. And what should we do to ensure that we transform these agreements to address the national context in which participants or in which citizens of our respective countries are living in? And what would be the role of the teachers? Because we know teachers are the drivers of the education sector. And how can we transform our classroom settings so that the kind of the quality of education we are giving is what we have intended for ourselves? You also told us about issues relating to financing, which is very key. Countries must put their finance where they have the agreements that they have made at global, regional, and sub-regional level. And issues relating to creating standards to ensure that we have standards for teachers as well as for the learning environment. Issues relating to TVET, which is key for us for transforming our respective countries in terms of employability of both boys and girls, men and women, the greening of our economy, and so on and so forth. Thank you so much for those profound words. Without further ado, I want to say you have really been a wonderful head of unit for us. And this we want to consider as a more or less a validatory speech, because from today, you would be proceeding on your well-deserved retirement. And I want to underscore this to say that we have enjoyed your leadership, and we hope that you will continue to contribute your quota to these laudable goals of education. Thank you very much. Would maybe come back to you should we have questions from the audience. Without further ado, let me go on to the next presenter, who will be presenting on the ESD in Southern Africa, past, present, and future. To do this is our Professor Hela Lord Sisika. She is a distinguished research professor at the Rhodes University. She is an internationally acclaimed researcher and has led various national and international research programs in environment and sustainability education. Her passion is sustainability and social justice education, the people's participation in transformation, education, and learning processes. We love to address her as the guru of ESD. Professor Hela, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Patience, and also thank you to Carolyn. I also want to echo not just the thanks for the presentation, but also for Carolyn's work in the Southern African region. It's many years that we've been working with her, and she has really done a huge amount to advance ESD in this region. So I also want to just add my gratitude to that. Let me just see if I can move. Yes, okay. All right, so I'm going to just give us a little bit of background on ESD in the Southern African region. And the history of the Sustainability Starts with Teachers program, which is set in the wider context that Carolyn also opened up for us and the different challenges that she presented to us. I'm going to put my video off because I know it is helpful for sound and bandwidth. So my topic is ESD past, present, and future in Southern Africa. And I want to also just underscore, Southern Africa as our home. It's the place where we all live, where we all do our work, and where we are, doing our educational work, which of course is such important work, as Carolyn has also indicated. As I mentioned yesterday, we are busy with our program, the SST, Sustainability Starts with Teachers program. And we will be working our way through 5 learning actions in the online course, and those will be centered around the Change Project. So we are really starting here. The Change Project must be the center of your work on this program. And we will then, I'm going to introduce some of the key background and ideas for Learning Action 1, which helps us to think about the Change Project and its work in the Southern African region. So the first part of the Change Project that you will be working on is to look at ESD, or Education and Sustainable Development, in your teacher education initiative context, or in the TVET college or institution where you are working. And what is very important, I saw there was a question in the chat yesterday, is to understand what ESD is and what ESD is trying to do. So Education for Sustainable Development is trying to respond to and also to help to proactively prevent sustainability challenges. And it is to help us develop a common understanding of sustainable development and education for sustainable development in our context, that we are focusing on this component, which is to understand the past, present, and future of ESD, and also the content of Learning Action 1. So one of the things that you will be working on in your communities of practice is to develop a common understanding of education for sustainable development and what it means in your context. So what does it mean in Northern Angola, in Southern Angola, in Luanda, in Maputo, in Northern Mozambique, all of the different areas where you are from and the places that you are from. What does it mean in TVET? What does it mean in teacher education? What does it mean for early childhood education in teacher education? So this is the work and the challenge that we all have, is to make sense of sustainable development in our own contexts. I mentioned yesterday that, Africa has got many different challenges that are facing us. I show you a few here. I showed you yesterday the climate change, also the food system, water security, as we know, flooding, drought, food production, livelihoods, food production, erosion of our soils. These are just some of the many different challenges that we are looking at in Southern Africa. I think Carolyn has also just shared some with us. But what I like about ESD is that it's a process of working together for a better future. And I remember listening to Ban Ki-moon, and he said, there is no plan B, because there is no planet B. We only have one planet. It's the planet where we all live. It's the planet where we all teach, and it is a planet under pressure. So as you join this program and as you join the ESD community in the SADC region, this is what we are doing. We are working together for a better future. And of course, this is not an easy job, because there are many different intersecting problems that we're trying to deal with. I think we see here the COVID-19 pandemic and its impacts on Africa and Southern Africa. We see water and food security challenges, climate change and water challenges. This little map here is a map of the food system challenges in Africa. And then we have the climate change challenges. So we have these many different kinds of things that are intersecting to make the context that we're in more challenging, and therefore the need for us to work together in order to build a better future. This is just some of the what happened to us here in South Africa when the COVID-19 pandemic happened. It was a health crisis, but in fact what it did was it produced and it brought to the surface a food crisis and a water crisis. So even though it's a health crisis, it's linked to other issues such as food, employment, livelihoods, water, and the other systems. So these issues are interconnected, and I think that this is the important message when it comes to ESD in Southern Africa. It's not just one issue on its own, they're interconnected challenges. So ESD has been, developing over a long period of time, and it is linked to the history and the definition of sustainable development. 1972 was the first UN conference on environment and development. It was one of, by the way, the first largest intergovernmental gatherings in the world. And interestingly, that such a large gathering of world leaders was about the safety and security of ourselves on our planet. So, this relationship between environment and development has been a critical one in the discussion on sustainable development right from the early days in 1972. In 1992, there was the Rio Earth Summit, which is where the concept of sustainable development was concretized, if I could say that, into global policy. In the year 2002, we had the Johannesburg World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, in Africa. In 2012, we had the Rio +20 Summit, which is where the focus shifted towards green economy that Carolyn was talking about just now. And in 2015, we had the proclamation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So you can see a long trend in global policy making to try to resolve the challenges of our planet, the environment and development relationship on our planet. And this is the most widely accepted definition of sustainable development, and I'll read it. It says that sustainable development is development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it's about intergenerational issues, not just the current generation, but also the next generation. The future of human beings on the planet is as much important as the contemporary period of human beings on the planet. What we do now has got many impacts into the future. So as these global policies have been developing, we've also been getting education policy that's been coming up alongside that. Chapter 36 of Agenda 21, which came out of the Rio Earth Summit, was a chapter on education. That's following the Johannesburg World Summit on Sustainable Development. We had a UN decade on education for sustainable development to try to fast track and upscale the role of education in trying to resolve these challenges. We've had SADC policies, ESD policies coming up in some of our countries. Namibia has a dedicated ESD policy. Angola was very active at one point in developing ESD practices and policies. We've also had the Global Action Plan, and now we have ESD 2030, which we'll be sharing more with you as we go on in the course. So sustainable development is not without its problems. There is contestation about the concept, and it is therefore a concept that we have to think carefully about, and we have to contextualize meaningfully so that it makes sense to ourselves, our people, and our continent. So there has been a lot of ESD development in the Southern African region since before 1992, and I'll share some of that with you. Even since before the Rio Earth Summit, there's been activity in the Southern African region in environment and sustainability education. And we are, because of this long history of practice, the UNESCO Rosa Office is the focal point for ESD in Africa. And Patience, who's chairing our session today, is leading that program across the African continent. And she is busy overseeing the launching of a number of country workshops for the latest ESD policy. There is also an Africa Environmental Education and Training Action Plan. And of course, we have the SDG 4 with its target 4.7. So to give you a little bit more background on environment and sustainability education, as it has emerged in the SADC region, it's a big field and it's a field of practice, and it's been transitioning. We've been learning, we've been growing, we've been, teaching ourselves, we've been developing courses, we've been trying to really support people in our region to come to terms with and to be able to cope with the environment and sustainability challenges that face us. One of the early institutions was the Environmental Education Association of Southern Africa, which was established in 1982. In fact, this year it's now a 40-year-old regional association. There'll be a conference in Namibia later this year. And just to remind Charles that we have to put in the abstract for the SST program by the end of today, if we want to feature the SST program at the ESA conference. But since 1982, there's been this association that has been working with partners, UNESCO, SADC, UNEP, UNICEF, and many others. And I'm happy to say that I have been an ESA member since 1991 myself. So I have been very much part of this institution, which has really been an anchor institution in developing this field of work in the SADC region. So ESA is an interesting association, as I've mentioned. It's 40 years old, and its logo is the baobab tree, and the baobab tree is actually the African tree of life. So it shows its symbol well. I think you will all recognize the baobab tree from across the SADC region. It stands in our countries, and it is the African tree of life. And it is an early peace-building association, and it was formed across national borders ahead of its time in its vision and intent. And it is the second oldest association in the world that deals with environment and sustainability education. So the SADC region is active in this particular area. It's not a new thing for us. We've been learning together for many years, and we continue to do so because the challenges that we face are not going away. So in the early days, when we established ESD in the SADC region and EE, we were working with this integrated perspective. We had this little diagram in the early 90s where we looked at, environment and sustainability is about the social, it's about the economic, it's about the biophysical, it's about the political, it's about people living together. It's about the living things and the life support systems that come from the ecologies that we are embedded in. It's about jobs and money. It's about power, policy, and decisions. And interesting, when we made the shift in the early days from environment to ESD, one of the things that did get a bit lost was the emphasis on the politics of ESD and environmental education. So we want to, emphasize that this thinking that is in ESD has been in the SADC region for many, many years. And all from the beginning, we've seen that environment is not separate from economics, politics, and society. They are very much interrelated. So that was one of the early insights when I first joined ESA was that, and I really felt it to be a very powerful insight. Another very early debate that was very interesting also was this question, are we educators or are we learners? Or are we all educators and learners? And we have to co-learn together. We have to learn how to solve these issues together. There's no body that knows exactly how to resolve all of the challenges that we're facing. And therefore, we all have to learn and teach. We have to be learners and educators and co-learn together. We have to also work across boundaries between the formal and the informal learning spaces. And it's in this space that the Change Project model that we will be working with was born. It was born as an ESA project, and it was born as an initiative to start courses so that we could teach each other, learn together how to change the circumstances that we're in and how to improve our education and learning practices. So that's the early story of the SST course and the change project model that we are working with in this program. By 1995, ISA, SADC REAP, and the UNESCO Windhoek office were working together to support courses. We were able to raise funding with this partnership to establish some of the early courses in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zanzibar, and we established the WWF International Certificate course in EE, which was then taken over by the SADC and the SADC Regional Environmental Education Program, which produced a course development network, and that developed courses in Swaziland, Zambia, Lesotho, Namibia, and elsewhere. I think even in Angola, there were some courses running. And these were the front runners of the Sustainability Starts with Teachers courses that we are now busy with here today. By the year 2000, we were also crossing boundaries between theory and practice, and we were trying to do, situated active learning approaches. We didn't want to just talk about environmental problems. We wanted to also engage people in resolving them. So we had to cross the boundary between theory and practice, and we put the focus on the matters of concern, things that were concerning people. And so we started to work around issues of energy, water, food, biodiversity. And in the Eco Schools program, we could see, in fact, that the children could lead the way in these practices, doing fantastic work all across the SADC region. In 2002, we hosted the World Summit on Sustainable Development. And there we had a special section. We had a special conference that was attached to the World Summit on Sustainable Development, which was co-hosted by UNESCO, ISA, and the SADC REAP. And in this process was the first time that we started one of our first online courses in ESD in the SADC region. It was linked to the UNESCO Teachers Program on ESD. And in fact, we produced it in those days as a CD-ROM before we had so much internet capacity. So we've been working on these things for a long time, working together, trying to see how to take things forward in our region. By 2010, course alumni and the ISA network members were engaged in and leading the African Regional Centers of Expertise in ESD network. And there we had partnerships between UNESCO, the United Nations University, and UNEP, where we started to really deal with some of the challenges around indigenous heritage knowledge and modern scientific knowledge. And there was this lovely publication that was produced. I think, Agua, you've been very much involved in this work as well, with Professor Rob and others, on trying to bring indigenous knowledge into the education system, and especially indigenous knowledge of sustainability practices. Here you can see one big meeting at the UNEP offices in Nairobi, where we were discussing this, working with communities and building this booklet on heritage knowledge. And we will be taking that forward in the program as well, with Professor Sol Shava and Dr. Masuku in one of our webinars coming up. By 2012, we were trying to look at the issue of green transformative economy and society and green skills research, because we realized that the TVET system was being left behind and the skills system was not dealing with these kinds of issues. And so we had to try to shift, and we have to shift the sort of old style of economics to more greener types of economies, circular economies. And it's very encouraging to see that the SADC is also beginning to think about this particular approach to economy. So instead of producing waste, we want to produce circular economies. And that needs a particular kinds of skills. And of course, the TVET institutions, as Carolyn has said just now, very crucial role to play there. So this is some of the work that we did, trying to develop the green skills and into TVET. And we were starting to look at the circular economy, zero waste, reuse, renew, sustainable design, eco-efficient these processes. In fact, this comes from a meeting that we had in the UNESCO offices in Paris, and then we were taking it into the SADC Secretariat. You can see in here with examples of TVET change projects coming from the SADC region. Here's an example from Botswana, where they were trying to reduce the pollution impact of oil coming from some of the activities there. So some of the early work there. By 2015, we were at the World Conference on ESD in Japan, and Southern African ESD was recognized there as being amongst some of the best in the world. Very creative, very active, a lot of work that has been going on, and quite a number of our alumni, the reference group members and others have been involved in these processes also for a long period of time. By 2015, we were also very much involved in the international policy making process, and we were also contributed actually to the defining of quality education and the inclusion of ESD as a key feature of quality education, which I talked about yesterday, and the defining of this particular target 4.7, which requires all of our governments to include sustainable development and ESD, human rights, gender equality, cultures of peace, global citizenship, the appreciation of cultural diversity, and culture's contribution to sustainable development into mainstream education, thinking about quality education. So you can see that this long history of work, we were able to even impact, not all on our own, but with many others at the global level in terms of policy making. By 2019, we were working very actively with Patience and the team in the UNESCO Harare office, Patience and Carolyn, and we were trying to strengthen ESD for teachers. Carolyn mentioned how important it was to work with teachers, because one of the things that we discovered at the World ESD conference and in the monitoring was that they were not giving enough attention to working with teachers to integrate sustainability into the education systems. So we started to work then with the UNESCO Harare office, with Carolyn, with Patience, with other partners, and to strengthen ESD for teachers. And that was the early days of the SST program. And also, by the way, the SADC region were also being commended and recognized for their work. And 3 Southern African projects have won the UNESCO ESD prize. And each of those prizes have been a global award, and each of them won $50,000 for their amazing work in ESD. And we'll show those to you also as we go along with the program. So in 2019, we started the SST program, but we were also by then also publishing a lot of the work that we're doing. So what we do is not just practice, we also do research and practice. I mentioned earlier, integrating theory and practice. And we will also encourage all of you to, take a reflective approach to your change projects. We've seen people publishing their change projects in our journal, the Southern African Journal of Environmental Education. And what was so interesting, by 2019, we could see that our scholarship from ESD in Southern Africa was moving across the world. And our journal, we were having in 2019, 55,000 downloads of our journal, and people from 86 countries across the world were reading our work, this work on ESD in the SADC region. So this journal is very important because it shares indigenous knowledge and Southern African ESD research across continents. It cements South-South engagement and connections, and associated to that, we've also created an e-learning library where we've been able to put SADC materials for use in the ESD course. And can you please check the volume? Somebody's
sorry, someone should please mute your.
And can you please
could you mute?
I'm checking who it is, Prof.
See who it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so by 2019, we had launched this new Sustainability Starts with Teachers course. And by 2020, we took the course online, as I mentioned yesterday, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. By 2021, we were starting to go to scale with quite a large number of participants, that we're still supporting many of them. And we are now our first translation of the program. So as we go, we are learning and trying to keep doing things. So while we've done all of this, there's still many problems in our societies. Here in Makanda, where I live, we've had major problems with droughts. We have these challenges with climate change that we've talked about. And all over, we still see waste. Can we please mute the other microphones that are not speaking? Sandy?
Prophet does not show who it is.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are dealing with these problems, and these are quite difficult problems. And of course, we also have other related issues such as poverty-related problems, and these are serious problems. So even 40 years after ESA has started, we are now working very strongly with the SDGs, and we are trying to continue this work together for change in and across the SADC region. So what our story shows is that we've done a lot, but we still have a lot to do. So we need to continue to integrate theory and practice. We need to continue to strengthen active learning. We need to continue to strengthen the engaged research and practices. We need to revitalize, and we have to build new partnerships between government, civil society, and other actors. We need to assist our municipalities to be more successful. We need to recognize our community's knowledge and expertise. And we really need to do this because by 2055, Africa will be home to half of the world's young people. And therefore, we also need to reimagine education in Africa so that this education that we are offering is going to be relevant education, meaningful education, and education that is actually going to take them into the future. So what is very important is to try to develop our agency for change, and we need to contextualize the SDGs, and we need to build partners in all of our contexts. And again, we must think, as Carolyn has also mentioned, about green skills for green societies, green work, and green learning. So we need to really strengthen this aspect of our work so that we're not producing pollution on the one side while we are trying to educate on the other side. We have to get a closed system, zero waste, less pollution, circular economies, so that we don't end up contradicting our own practices. And very, very important is we have to continue to prioritize boundary crossing work with teachers and educators. We have to support and expand our work with teachers. Teachers are very crucial in the building of educational quality. But of course, teachers need to be doing this work with others, with communities, NGOs, parents, students, and others. So this is a very important program that we are busy with. It's a very important program that we've been part of. And I hope that this program will have a long life into the future. And with your help, I think we can do that. There's a lot of material on the internet about the SDGs and how we can understand them better. We will share that with you as we go along. This is one website, www.globalgoals.org, and it carries a lot of information about the SDGs, how we can engage with them, and what can be done, what is being done. Most importantly, as we do this work, we have to bring our local knowledge, cultures, our metaphors, and our approaches to ESD in the SADC region. And this is such a lovely example from Lesotho, where they were talking about issues concerning what they call Larona, which means the earth, our home. It's where we are, the earth, our home. It's a concept in Sesotho that helps to make sense of what ESD is. So I want to encourage all of you to draw on your local languages, to draw on your cultures, to draw on your indigenous knowledges as you develop your ESD practices. I think Charles will also be supporting a lot more of this work as we go forward. And of course, when we focus on ESD, it can improve the quality of education. So sustainable development can improve the quality of education, and quality education is needed for sustainable development. So education is so important for this whole process of transformation of society. And when we look at SDG target 4.7, we should not see ASD just as a technical or a pedagogical process. Rather, it should be a systemic and an emancipatory transformation process in our societies. So as you do your change projects, think about them as systemic and emancipatory transformation processes that are going to be empowering for your students, for the teachers, for the people, for the communities that you're going to work with. And this is all very much important because we need to continue to do this work to work into the new policy framework, which is the ESD for 2030, that Patience is leading across the African continent. And you can see here, this policy framework says we need societal transformation, transformation of learning outcomes, transformation of learning content, transformation of pedagogy and the learning environment. So, and this all needs to be done by us. So these change projects that you'll be working on will be so important to put in place these change processes that are being talked about in the policy documents. There's also very nice guidance coming through from UNESCO to make education more holistic. So instead of just focusing on cognitive outcomes, also focus on the socio-emotional outcomes and the action engagement that is possible through education. What also interesting coming out more recently, a new document that's just been published by UNESCO, which says that we also need to improve our curriculums because many curriculums around the world are not including. Can we just monitor the microphones, please? So we're seeing a new study that is showing that many of the curriculums in our countries are not including environment, biodiversity, sustainability, or climate change very well. Here at the top, this little diagram here shows that in Namibia, there's only a very small percentage of content on climate change, which is very problematic because Namibia is one of the driest regions being most affected by climate change. So it's very important that we also look at curriculum and curriculum improvement as we do the work. Most recently, there's been a World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development that was held in Berlin. And this Berlin Declaration, it makes a number of important points, one of which is that we need to include environment and climate action as a core curriculum component, while also maintaining our holistic perspective on ESD. And we need to emphasize cognitive skills, social and emotional learning, and action competencies at the same time. And this point is so important that comes out of this Berlin Declaration. It says, transformative learning for people and the planet is a necessity for our survival and that of future generations. The time to learn and act for our planet is now. So we will be in this program focusing on transformative learning, and we would love to develop our ideas of transformative learning and our practices of transformative learning with you in your change projects. So the ESD for 2030 agenda wants us to build capacities of educators. We think these should be transformative learning capacities for educators. So we're doing T-learning for teachers, transformative learning for teachers in this program. That, of course, helps to transform learning environments. It also helps to advance policy. It helps to empower and mobilize youth, and it helps to accelerate local level actions. So this is very important work. And I think that it's so important to see the times that we are in. And I like this quote from David Orr. I'll just read it. He says that the knowledge, the skills, the aptitudes, and the values that are necessary to industrialize the earth are not necessarily the same as those that will be needed to heal the earth or build durable economies and good communities based on principles of equity and sustainability. So they're asking us to think differently about what education is for, as Carolyn said in the opening of her presentation. So the challenge then and the invitation to you is to start to work with others in your institutions and to develop this shared understanding of ESD in your context. And we will continue with our process as we go forward in the course, moving around our 5 learning actions. So thank you very much for listening to that. I hope it was okay and everybody could follow. And I'm very sorry that I can't speak Portuguese myself.
Thank you
Paige.
very much for that very comprehensive history, you know, how we have come to the point where we are now, tracing it from 1972 till date. It's not a small task to be done, and you did it because indeed you are our ESD guru, who was not just observing history passing, but being part of that history, and you have made your own contributions. Thank you so much for letting us know. I believe participants may have some questions. We still have a few minutes to go. And if we are able to get some of these questions or comments, please let us know. Previn,
Thank you,
could
Chair.
you help us? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. There's a question from Louisa. I will give the direct translation of the question in English.
Okay.
The themes and trainings given from 1972 to 2015 are almost the same in regard to the range of ideas regarding the planet's well-being, environmental well-being. And I wonder if there has been a considerable improvement since then. That's the question from Louisa.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have more questions? So before we allow our panelists to respond.
I do not see any yet, Chair.
Okay. Okay, Hela, may you make your contribution?
I think that there has been a lot of movement since 1972, and certainly our knowledge of our planetary system and its relationship to human well-being has advanced enormously. I think so have our practices, because, for example, in 1972, we did not have renewable energy as an option or a technology option. What I feel we need to do more, and that I feel we could have made more progress, is actually in education. I feel that ESD is still seen, to be marginal, when in fact it should be mainstream. So that is, I think, one of the main reasons why it's been also so important and so good to work with UNESCO. And the work that UNESCO has done has been to mainstream these ideas into education systems, such that now we cannot think about quality education as an education that does not include ESD. If ESD is not in education, it can't be quality education in the contemporary space that we're in. So, but this needs to be strengthened, carried into our communities, into our education institution, the knowledge of teachers. So I think education can do more. I think that the political systems and political will is also, of course, a big challenge. We need to be able to challenge some of the politics of our times that continue to produce problems rather than create solutions for us. I think everybody in Southern Africa knows that. Of course, that's also in some ways linked to education, although education is not the only solution, as we know. So there are many challenges, but there have been solutions that have come up. So I think for us to look around us, see what we can do, see what solutions are there, see what people think, see how to bring this into education. It's an ongoing work. It's not something that can be done in one day. So I hope that answers the question. It's not an easy question and it's not an easy answer.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. I would like to call on Caroline to make her contributions to that question as well. because in going forward, the packaging and the solutions that we are recommending are definitely different, because things are also unfolding as we move along. We have tried certain things and they have not worked. We have also learned from the past. And of course, we have also done a lot to make improvement on the past and extending the frontiers of knowledge and our efforts in transforming the environment or our society. Caroline, you have the floor.
Sorry, Patience, can you just briefly repeat, because I was talking to somebody. I was sorry.
Yes, there was a question that was stating that it looks like things have continued to be the same and we are doing the same thing. Why is it so? And Hala has said that we are not doing the same things. We've changed strategies. We've done a number of things differently to ensure that we address the problems as they kept unfolding. So I want you to make your additional contribution to how we have, what additional efforts we have put in over the years and the plans we have, especially for ESD going forward, looking at the SADC strategy of ESD, for example. Over.
Let me say that I think it's both things it's like more of the same, but at the same time, there's more of something different. So it's parallel process, I think. No, that and it's really, that's the, how should we say, that's the path to transformation. And if I use my, how should I say, my my starting point in my presentation, that Angola and Mozambique have fought liberation wars. Okay, and if we look at the societies today, there's some changes and there's more of the same. And I think that's the nature of transformation. It is not easy, and sometimes it can happen that there will even be more of the same before the new world order, the transformed order. And I think the question and what we have been trying to do in this project is to start with the teachers, because we believe that teachers play an important role, and as they are the key, I should say, without transformed teachers, we will not have transformed classrooms. And so I believe that that's the difficulty we're facing. No, I mean, we are in societies where all this discussion about whether we go growth, to use more oil, to have big cars, or to really see to be more sustainable, and to see how can we really, in our own ways as individuals and as teachers, slowly transform society. I should say it's not easy. And imagine 30 years of ESD, we still have more of the same. It's clear that we still need to do more work. But I think once we start with ourselves and teachers and teacher educations, we are on our way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have more questions. Could you help us, Ruben?
Yes, Chair. We also have a question on what kind of reinforcement should be given to teachers, since they are central to quality education.
Okay. Yes, Caroline, do you want to come to respond to that quickly?
That's our biggest challenge. We are relying so much on teachers, but the conditions of work, their service, their in-service and pre-service training is wanting. And on the one hand, I am always looking at governments and how they treat their teachers, how they value their teachers, because it's an indication of how you value your education. But I think we are slowly, in the past 5 years that we have been doing sustainability starts with teachers, with Rhodes University, with Dela, slowly but surely, through the change projects, the teachers get valued and they get appreciated and they get recognized. And I think once we slowly do that, that's a problem. UNESCO, for example, is pushing for comprehensive teachers policies that will make sure that the working conditions are addressed, the environment, the sexual harassment, the standards. That's why I mentioned standards and CPD are really enshrined in policies and not just ad hoc. And we have a long way to go because as the data shows, and I did not even focus on Mozambique and Angola, but maybe that's one of your assignments to really understand what is the situation of teachers. And maybe that's an important starting point also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I see the hand of Agua. You have the floor.
Muito bom dia a todos e muito obrigado pelas duas apresentações que nós tivemos hoje. Creio que são boas aulas. Vou atacar, entre aspas, de boas maneiras, claro. Vou pedir um aditivo da professora Caroline sobre como é que nós podemos concorrer àqueles projetos que apresentou, por exemplo, ligados com programas verdes, que nós podemos encontrar para as comunidades, para não sei o quê. Que tipo de sinergias podemos fazer para que as nossas escolas, nossos estudantes ou os nossos jovens possam partilhar ou possam concorrer a estes fundos. Obrigado.
Okay, thank you very much, Agua. Caroline, I think the question was directed to you.
Obrigada. I think Hela will also be able to answer, but I think let me give you an example now in terms of having synergies. I think the question we're faced with is in our campuses, are we talking about climate change and what we are doing about climate change? As a result of all this convention, we know that there are national climate change learning strategies. And maybe that is one starting point to understand what governments have committed and that teachers and the young people and communities can start at that. But on the other hand, there is also another entry point to start in the schools and to make sure that schools are also reaching out to school young people who are not in schools and who have the possibility to work with youth in schools. I think there are many entry points, and I think our challenge as educators is to understand where is the possibility that we can have synergy, and because we know that with synergy there is greater impact. Over.
Thank you very much. Hela, you want to make your additions to the discussion? Professor Hela, you are muted.
Oh, sorry, Patience. I'm speaking to myself here. Yeah, so when we developed the Africa Environmental Education and Training Action Plan, it was very interesting because we were consulting with youth, all of the youth organizations across the African continent. And one of the points that they made, I think, can answer this question, because they said they don't want to hear about the green economy. They want to see the green economy. So then I said to them, okay, so how will you begin to see the green economy? And then we had a long discussion, and in the end, we agreed with them that the best way to begin to see the green economy is to start small with demonstrations So to demonstrate the green economy wherever you are. So if I go back to that example of the Botswana team that were trying to stop the oil getting into the soil, and they were trying to set up a recycling system for that oil. So they were demonstrating a principle of the green economy. Now, this can be done everywhere. The way that we grow our food, if we use agroecological principles, it's demonstrating a green economy. So I said to the young people and the students, I said, develop the green economy demonstrations, because if people can see them at the level of a demonstration, they become possible. They're not just theory, they are practice. So this is very important, and that is why we also want to work with change projects, real change projects on the ground, so that the students are implementing the principles, developing the demonstrations. So I hope that answers the question at a sort of very practical level as well, you know, to add to the discussion. Thank you. Patience.
Okay, I think our time is fast spent. If there are no other very pressing questions.
There is, sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
There is a final question, and and also there was a question from Hilario asking whether these presentations will be summaries or presentations will be given to them. And yes, we are, as we said before, we are putting all presentations onto the course website, and they'll be available for once they're done for the day. So you can find it on the course website, and we can show it to you tomorrow as well. There is a question from Geraldo, and I will do the direct translation in English. It is clear that when this project was signed, there were several difficulties in its implementation. I would like to know how to counteract the resistance of governments to implementation of such projects. Above all, in the inclusion of the curricula in Angola emanated through the structure, and how to react when a government does not show itself flexible with the implementation of the project. Very big question. I'm not sure who it is addressed to.
Okay. The summary is that what are the challenges and how we have been able to address them, right?
Correct, Chair.
Yeah. Hela, from your end, what were the challenges and how did you resolve them?
Yes, I think that the challenges, you know, are always there. There's nothing that's easy or perfect. So the best way to approach them is to recognize that there are challenges and then to see what can be done. So I have been, you know, completely impressed by people in the SADC region. Even during the lockdown, the teacher educators were developing some most incredibly creative change projects. So I think we should not underestimate our own capacity for contributing to change. Having said that, we also need to, you know, work at the level of government and to try to hold our governments more accountable. Also to help them to understand that these are very critical issues and that they are central to the meaning of education quality. Because if we are offering an education that is relevant to the last century rather than this century and the future, then you know, really we're wasting a lot of time. So, and also resources. So I think to use our capacity, our agency, our intelligence, our intellects, our networks, our partnerships, to do the work together. It's not something that can just happen overnight. It needs to be done by us, by people working together. So that's the best answer that I have in terms of challenges. And interestingly, slowly over time, things do change, and yeah, and they happen because people try, you see. So this is the bottom line of the story. So just recently out of this program, we've been able to work with SADC to develop a SADC ESD strategy that Carolyn has put in the chat over there. So we are able to do things, and we just have to keep on working, you know, at every level and in every forum where we feel we have the power to make some or other change or to do something that can contribute to this better future that I was talking about. Since we only have one planet, we don't have a planet B. There's only this planet. We don't have another one. So yes, just to say, we will share the document with everybody. We just have to wait for the SADC structures to have a look at it, I think. Carol, I'm not sure what the status is in terms of being able to share the document at this point with everybody in the region. Maybe you can give us an update on that.
I think it's a draft strategy. Sorry, patience. I think it's a draft strategy. It has been discussed and validated, and I think it's, as far as I am concerned, it's no harm sharing it, mindful that it's a draft. No, I think we can share it, and Charles has the draft version.
Okay, so maybe we could ask Charles to share it with us. Charles, I don't know how quick you are to be able to find it, but you could pop it in the chat if it's quick for you to find. Otherwise, we can share it tomorrow or as we go on with our program.
I think I can share with you and colleagues so that they can, and in the RGMs, reference members who can quickly share with the participants. Do we have
Okay, if you put it in the chat, Charles, people can download it. I don't know if you can.
Okay, fine. On that.
Otherwise, we'll circulate it. We will share it. Thank you, Carolyn, for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Ella. Thank you very much, Caroline. Do you have any final words you want to tell us, Caroline?
No, I just wanted, I just wanted to say that we are not having many opportunities to be in the forefront of transforming education. So I think this is an important opportunity for teachers to really understand how we can transform ourselves and our teaching practices, and in so doing the educational system. So I wish you good luck. This is my last day as UNESCO, because I am retiring today. And so I wish you all the luck. You are in good hands. Hela, Rhodes University has been our partner for several years, not only with the SIDA, but with Japan Funds in Trust. And as you know, Hela has 30 years of experience, and the colleagues, Charles, and the patients, and the team that is supporting you. We have the elements to help you transform yourself and your practices. So I hope you make good use of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hela. Thank you very much, Caroline. We would really miss you, honestly. We take this forum to say thank you for all your passionate contribution. We could almost name you ESD in our office because of your passion. And the way, even when we went for a higher education program in Barcelona, we looked at the waste, that post-conference waste, and we wondered, what will happen to all these banners, all these large banners to advertise the program in Barcelona, after Barcelona? And we were not satisfied with the fact that it would be thrown or discarded. We decided to take some of those banners, and today we have, a product coming out from those banners, all the way from Spain, into bags reused. I want to show you.
This is the UNESCO change project, office change project.
Yes, remind us that we should give you one, Hela, as you were supposed to be with us.
So that, so that it is not, can you imagine? It's not, we walk the talk. This is coming from ESD, higher education program. And you can see the banners made into reusable bags, so that it's not a complete waste. Yeah. So we try to walk the talk, and we say sustainability starts with teachers. We didn't say ends with teachers. So we are trying from one angle to build an army using our education sector of people who will move and transform the world. Of course, transformation does not happen overnight. It takes time. And even after 30 years, we are still finding new ways of ensuring that this transformation happens. And that's why we are so very satisfied working with our ESD guru, Hela. And she will be with us till the end of the program. And so we will continue to hear from her. We continue to listen to her. And for many other gurus that are here, I can see Shepherd, from our CEDA partners. And I can see some other people who have been partners with us over the years, and you'll be hearing from them as the course goes on. So what is left for me to say, thank you very much for your attention. Sorry if we have not been able to take your questions. Please take time to write your questions. We would answer them during the course of this seminar series or before the end of the course. And of course, all the documents will be shared with you. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your active participation. God bless you all.
Thank you, Patience. And
Thank
go
you,
well,
Patience.
Carolyn.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll see you
Bye.
definitely somewhere.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.